What's up? What's up? Welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm going to make a case that most people never experience freedom, but I'm going to make this case based on what I've gathered in information from other entrepreneurs who I asked a question about freedom, but I asked it in a way that most people never ask. So I got them. I got responses from them that actually shows where freedom is, and almost not really how to get it, but it shows where freedom is. And so today we're going to look at that, and hopefully at the end of this, you'll have your freedom declaration. How about that? Your freedom declaration. So why am I doing this today? I'm doing this because I think it's time to share with you guys and share with the world what beyond freedom is. Beyond freedom is something totally new. It's something totally different. It's something that, most people would like to experience. It's just that they're probably not working towards it. So before we get into what beyond freedom is, we're going to get into what freedom is. And I looked up Harriet Tubman. You're familiar with Harriet Tubman. She brought a lot of slaves to freedom. But here's the thing, did they actually get freedom? Yeah, they had freedom from being a slave. They still didn't have freedom. So Harriet Tubman spent a good portion of her life after she escaped slavery. So now she quote unquote had freedom. And then she was then helping other peoples to gain this freedom from slavery. But here's the thing, once they gained freedom from slavery, they were then enslaved by something else. They were enslaved by something else. And a lot of times that enslavement of something else it may not necessarily be what you think. The enslavement of the something else is basically it's now us enslaving ourselves. Imagine being a slave. I can only imagine my forefathers being a slave, and then all of a sudden I wasn't being forced to do something, but now I had to think for myself, what is going to drive the context of my thoughts on a daily basis? More than likely, what's going to drive my thoughts on a daily basis is the fact that I had been a slave. And now I'm not a slave to that master, but now I'm a slave to somebody else or to something else. So I asked the question of a number of people that we interviewed last year on our podcast, Beyond Freedom podcast. I'll share more about Beyond Freedom as we kind of move along. And I think I got seven. I think we interviewed 7 people, so I got 7 different answers. The question was, what is your definition of beyond freedom? So I'm going to read the first answer. So it's the first answer I got from one of our clients. Her name is Eileen Kapsaftis. She defines beyond freedom as living in perfect peace and shalom, which means everything functioning according to divine design and destroying the authority attached to chaos. What are the first things we want to pay attention to this? Peace, peace, and more peace. That's what shalom is. She emphasizes it's not just freedom, but beyond freedom, serving a God of more than enough, not just enough. More than enough, not just enough. A lot of times we're experiencing some sort of freedom, but we're still living in lack. She also says, it means this: not living in bondage, wandering, worry, concern, or fear, living with God's power, love, and sound mind. Then she says, stepping into Jesus's peace, not as the world gives, living out God's word by speaking it and standing on his promises, knowing who God says he is and who he says we are, complete freedom that comes by grace with Jesus as our guarantor. She describes it as living in shalom regardless of circumstances. The days she starts by speaking God's words are great days, no matter what happens. So when we think about freedom, a lot of times we go from, I need freedom from this, then I need freedom from this, then I need freedom from this, and then I need freedom from this. When we have to start from freedom, peace. We got to start at the place of peace. So wherever we are today, right? At this recording, it's August 20th of 2025, and starting from a place of peace. If I'm thinking about freedom, I need my peace first. If I boil down what Eileen said, peace first, peace in all things, abundance in all things, not living in scarcity, not living from the state of lack. When we think about even financial freedom, somebody can get financial freedom and yet still have not attained freedom. They don't have peace. They're still living in lack because they have a freedom, right? Maybe they don't have to go to work every day, right? So they have enough money to take care of themselves, but they don't have enough to take care of more. They don't have the abundance yet. So freedom is stepping into a place where there's so much more there than you will ever need. You can take some out and it continues to replenish. But most people won't experience freedom because we don't get to the place of having perfect peace, not living in scarcity. My friend Darian Claxton said this. He defines beyond freedom as a level of ministry and impact. It's exponential that allows people or him to reach more people simultaneously and multiplies time. He explains it as kingdom authority and kingdom assignment, never being satisfied with his current level of influence or impact. He contrasts this with regular freedom, just having bills paid and expenses covered, by emphasizing what you do with the time freedom provides. Beyond freedom means constantly looking for more weights, leveling up, and seeking greater influence rather than staying comfortable. Daniel wants to tell God at the end of his life, you gave me 7 years and I've got 1,000 years worth of work out of it, maximizing the impact and ministry potential of every moment rather than just trading time for money or staying in the comfort zone. So Darian, his beyond freedom is going past himself, right? Yeah, I can have financial freedom, but getting past myself where I can do way more. I can have exponential growth. He talks about 7 years being 1,000. Like I can take 7 years and go 1,000 times through multiplication, some kind of multiplication that is not heard of. So when we get to this point of seeing where freedom can really take us, why do I want to settle for freedom when I can go beyond? Is what Darian is talking about. And when I heard him say this the first time, it was mind bending. Like my mind bended just a little bit because I was just like, 7 years with 1,000 years worth of work. That's powerful. Let's go into my friend Jamie Pottinger, who defines beyond freedom as being in a position where you're not just surviving or even thriving, but you have secured enough value to move forward and add value to others. He could have probably said money. He explains it as having resources beyond your immediate needs. When his wife budgets for $3,000 vacation, he thinks $4,500 because he's planning for unexpected. Beyond takes you past what you budget for. Beyond freedom means having friends who are also beyond, who can help when needed, and living with margin so that when one thing goes wrong, you're not left stranded on the side of the street. As Jamie puts it, beyond gives more. You're not only in a position where you're surviving, we're in a position where we can move and not only help yourself or help others, weave I'm sorry. We were made not just to be ourselves, but to add value to others. And you can only add value when you have secured enough value to move forward. Jamie's talking about having the value, having more value than you need, having more money than you need, having more resources than you need, having more access than you need, like having so much more that when you tap into more, it doesn't matter how much you pull out because there's still more where it comes from. And then being around more people that think the same way because they're thinking the same way you're thinking beyond, we can all exponentially grow and add more value to more people and more people and more people. So what Jamie is saying here is going beyond helps us to add more than enough, not just to our family, but to more people. Jens Delport, one of our clients, he said this. He says, beyond freedom looks like time with family, having quality time to spend with the loved ones, financial abundance, having the money to do what God has called you to do without limitations, without limitations, not for personal gain, but to be more effective serving God's purposes, like building something for someone or buying someone a house, having complete health, walking in full health by making wise choices about what you put in your body, relational legacy, building close foundation that last generation, similar to the close relationship he has with his biological brothers in Africa. He emphasizes that financial abundance isn't about prosperity for its own sake. I love this part, but about having the resources to fulfill God's calling and help others. He wants his business to ultimately bring glory to God, viewing it as God's business that he's been placed in charge of. Abundance, prosperity, not just for prosperity's sake, but for the sake of the calling that God has put on our life. So going beyond freedom is going into our calling, living in a way that we can spend way more time with our family. We can have access to way more financial resources. We can experience complete and perfect health. I love that part, complete and perfect health. Beyond, right? Beyond freedom takes us into a new realm. I got a few more. My friend Julia Winston says this. She defines beyond freedom as existing in a realm and territory as if there was no bondage, going beyond the typical concept of freedom, which implies there was restriction at some point. She explains it as this. What if you don't define your life by its restrictions, by the suppression? What if you define your life by liberty, as if nothing had ever restricted you? Julie describes it as a place beyond freedom where as if lack, restriction, suppression, oppression never existed. And what could your life look like if you weren't trying to overcome, but you were just becoming, just being? Especially, it's about operating from a place of complete liberty rather than constantly trying to overcome past limitations or bondage. So I love the sentiment of what Julia is saying. Julia is saying at some point we were restricted. At some point there was bondage. At some point there were some holdbacks. At some point we did not have something. But going beyond freedom puts us into the place where she uses the word liberty. But that's almost like saying what Eileen said when Eileen said peace. You're at the place where it's almost like it never happened. There was a time where I don't even remember when. I don't remember when I wasn't in this place. So going beyond freedom, getting past this place where I just got enough for me, but getting to the place where there's no limitations. A friend of ours that we met at a conference, a speaker, named Dee Maddox, she says this: beyond freedom means going past all constraints, structure, and limitations, even beyond what you're free to do. She explains it as going beyond the freedom of entrepreneurship, which frees you from doing what someone else wants when they want it and what they tell you to and what they tell you to charge, and moving into areas you might not have even known existed. He describes it as limitless, like infinity. She references how when you have enough money to buy everything you want, you realize happiness isn't tied to material things, but comes from within. So beyond freedom means having everything you want and going beyond just the ability, beyond the money, beyond the decisions, beyond any constraints at all. It's about reaching a state of complete limitlessness. That part. Complete and utter limitlessness. See, when we think about freedom, most people don't think about limitlessness. That's why I say most people never experience freedom, because we don't think about limitlessness. We don't consider the fact that, hey, let's remove all restrictions. Let's remove all limitations, is what Dee's talking about. Dee also mentioned the entrepreneurship game. Now, here's the thing about entrepreneurship. A lot of times you get into entrepreneurship and then people tell you, hey, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to charge. And getting to the point where you say, well, no, I'm going to charge what I'm going to charge, right? And, because, I remember having a conversation with Dee about this. And we had a breakthrough. Well, she had a breakthrough in what she could charge, because she realized that there was some limit placed on the idea around how much she can earn. So when you get to the point where you know that you can earn, you can make, you can have whatever you say you desire, you can do that. But we're going beyond freedom. We're not looking at freedom the way freedom used to be looked at. We're not going to do that. I'm going to dedicate my life to helping people and families and entrepreneur families get beyond and have beyond freedom. That's what I'm dedicating my life to. All right. So we got one more of our friends, and then I'm going to share with you what myself and my partner had to say. So one of our friends is named Sean Bagley. He says beyond freedom means others. But he's thinking big here. Specifically, it represents the end result where others are not only impacted by the freedom he creates for himself, but are also free in their own right, whether it's financial, spiritual, or whatever freedom means to them individually. I love this one. He emphasized that it's so much bigger than us, and it represents a collective liberation where everyone can achieve their own version of freedom. See, what Sean is saying here is that what's the point in having freedom if no one else has freedom? What's the point? So he said it in that first sentence, it's about others. It's about what other people can have in their freedom. So the more people like Harriet Tubman, the more people I can share this with, the more people I can show how it works, the more people I can help to open up their minds to having the same thing that I'm experiencing, then I get to the point where I realize that it's about the liberation of us all, not just one. See, we were taught to be individualist, but in this new era of beyond freedom, we're going to teach how individualism is what causes the problem and how it's going to now be a collective liberation effort to help everyone, especially entrepreneurial families, Go beyond freedom. All right, we're almost done. And then I'll wrap this up. Here's what my partner, Shauna Bell, had to say. She says, beyond means we're not just doing transactional tax work like traditional CPAs. We're coaches. We're coaches. We don't just take your money and give you tax returns. We elevate business owners, teach them, help them grow towards their actual goals, though most don't even have clear goals when they come to us. Our approach offers freedom, education, and helps clients step back to really look at what their business has become. We show them the fastest way to increase their bottom line, paying less in taxes. That's free money they wouldn't ordinarily have. Then there's the next step and the next step. There's more. There's more God put on us to do beyond just client work, like this podcast, which at the time we'll be doing and helping more people discover their own beyond freedom. The essence of what Shauna is saying is coming out of the old framework of simply doing what they taught you in school. We're no longer going to focus on what we've been taught in the past. We're going to focus on what matters today, which is educating, helping to elevate, helping to grow, helping the clients to see beyond. And because what she's saying is she realized that, wow, God has put more on her than merely just doing the main work that you think you signed up for. Wow. Now, lastly, here's what Jay Moore, the health accountant, had to say. Beyond freedom is about understanding that freedom is actually a compound word. You have two words. You have free, and then you have dom. Dom, which is short for dominion or kingdom. See, you can be financially free, but still not have freedom. They are totally different things. Real freedom comes when you discover your dominion, that specific purpose God created you for. The cost of freedom isn't free. You have to be a slave to something. Either you're going to be a slave to your God-given purpose, or you'll end up being a slave to what you're not supposed to be doing. And if you choose the wrong master, you'll be upset at the end, wondering why you didn't get where you wanted to go. Freedom starts with discovering one thing, just one thing, and mastering it completely. You don't move to the next area of freedom until you got dominion over the first thing. So what is the essence of what Mr. J. Moore is talking about? He's talking about discovering your dominion, discovering what you've been created for, discovering the reason for your life, discovering that when we get on the side where mastery is present with dominion, we find the thing that God has placed us here on the planet to do, and that takes us beyond freedom. It's a guarantee. You go beyond financial freedom. You go beyond health freedom. You go beyond like all the freedoms. You get beyond them all, because when you find your dominion, when you find the reason why God put you on this planet, all of a sudden, it's like the Matrix. If you watched the first Matrix, I love the first Matrix was just amazing. When Neo when he finally saw his dominion, he literally saw it. He was just like he could feel it. He got to the point where he started feeling it. If you watch the Matrix, it's coming towards the end. It's building up. Like he wasn't too sure. Morpheus is kind of egging him on, telling him he's the one, and I forgot the girl's name. She's telling they all think he's the one. And he's like, no, I'm not the one. But you're the one. No, I'm not the one. And then something happened. Once it wasn't about him being the one, that's when it clicked. Remember? It was when Morpheus got kidnapped. They kidnapped Morpheus. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this isn't about me anymore. This just is about what would I want to, this is what I would do. Well, let's just go for it. Let me just go and I'm just going to go and rescue. So now he start moving towards his dominion, right? Even though they told him, well, he says, no, I'm not the one, but I feel like this is the right thing to go rescue Morpheus, right? So to go rescue Morpheus, and then all of a sudden he starts moving in a way, that Trinity is like, oh my goodness, you're moving different. Like I've never seen anybody move that fast. He's like, oh really? He's not even realizing what's happening, right? Because he stepped into his beyond before he knew really that he had it. He stepped into it with faith, but not faith in the fact that he was good. Faith in the fact that he cared about somebody. Faith in the fact that it was about somebody else. And because it was about someone else, he removed himself from the equation. And all of a sudden, the thing that everybody thought he had just started showing up. And he was like, oh, well, I didn't realize that was happening because he still had not embraced it. Then as as you keep going along, then he gets face to face with the fears. He's face to face with the giants, the ones that's in control, the ones that has all the power, the Smith machine. It's like Mr. Smith, that all the Smith machines is coming after him, and they're here to get him. And he's fighting with the main Smith guy. They're going back and forth, and he's getting some in, and Smith is beating him up. And then Smith takes him out. But he's laying there. He's not really dead because it's the Matrix, right? You don't get, you don't die in the Matrix. You only die in the Matrix if you believe you died. Now, Trinity is, if you saw the movie, Trinity's talking to him, up at the ship because she got out. So you would think that his conscious mind was still open, right? See, when we keep our conscious open, we can still hear things that are not in the physical world, that are not in this, that's hear things in the physical world, because she was technically in the physical world and he was in the spiritual world. But he could hear things like, oh, I can hear something. And then he remembered. And then he woke up. And then as he woke up, he realized who he was. It's kind of like I had a prayer. I'm almost done. Don't leave. I had a prayer some time ago. And I asked God to help me to remember who I am before I got here. The thing about that prayer is that things were already moving towards me discovering it. It's just that timing is everything. Just like we did these podcast interviews almost a year ago. It took 9 months. It took about 9 months, almost 8 to 9 months before I went back to discover this Beyond Freedom thing. And to remember though. So when you finally remember who you are, you wake up in the Matrix and you realize, oh, this isn't even real. Or this can't stop me. And so Neo realizes that whatever the Smith agents send after him, they can't stop him. In fact, they're not even real. And he defeats them all because he came into himself. He realized that there was something in him that was always there, that was always sending an itch, that was always tapping him. But he finally stepped in. And why did he step in? Sean Bagley said it. It was because of others. See, when we think about beyond freedom, we can't just think about how much money we want to make. We can't just even think about the impact we want to make per se, because now we want to start tallying up the score. We have to genuinely think about who we're really going to help. Like, who am I really going to help? See, by not knowing who I'm really going to help, it's almost like, well, how are you going to get there? If you don't know who you're going to help, then there's no way you can help anybody. And that's one of the things that I've seen our own business actually have a challenge with, is just nailing it. Who am I going to help? Who are the others? So most people don't experience freedom because we don't know who can benefit from the freedom that we have. See, you may be saying, Jay, I don't have the freedom yet. Well, you do have a freedom. You just haven't identified it quite yet. You just need help identifying your freedom so that you can point that freedom at people who would then want that freedom. See, it's not just about one freedom. There's all sorts of freedoms that you can offer to other people. You got to first get beyond yourself and say, you know what? I can help that group of people get this type of freedom. And because that group of people get that freedom, I'm going to experience the first level of going beyond. See, most people don't experience freedom. One, because they don't go beyond freedom. They don't get to the point in their life when they don't see restriction. They don't get to the point in their life where they don't focus on others. They don't get to the point in their life when they don't realize that, they actually have a limitless capability. They don't get to the point in their life where they discover dominion. They don't get to the point in their life where they don't, they're not just doing all the regular things in their industry, the stuff that everybody told them to do. They don't get to the point in their life when they move away from bondage, away from scarcity, they don't get to that point in their life when they stop or don't live in that place of margin, that place where they actually have more than enough, the abundance. They don't get to the point in their life when they can see exponential growth, like 7 years to 1,000 years, like getting 1,000 years worth of work. Now that's very extreme. But I love what Darian said, 1,000 years worth of work in 7 years. But they don't get there. They don't get to the point in their life when they say that, oh, wow, yes, I can elevate my family. Yes, I can elevate my health. Yes, I can elevate people. They don't get to the point in their life where they don't actually experience shalom, peace, liberty. That place where you ultimately experience your God-given power. And your God-given power, which you already have beyond freedom, starts from a place of shalom, peace, liberty, you name it. But if there was a principle I'd share with you right here at the end that you can live by today, the principle would be live with all expectation that whatever you put your mind to do, whatever objectives and goals, whatever beyond freedom means to you, just means you have the faith. You have the absolute faith to do it. And from there, that's where your beyond freedom starts. So don't be like most people not to ever experience freedom. Be like the few people who experience freedom by going beyond freedom. Guys, I hope you got value today from this message. If you did, please leave a comment. Please say in the comment, I'm going beyond freedom. And I will see you on the next episode. God bless.
This has been the Account for Your Life podcast with your host, the healthy accountant himself, Jay Moore. Until next time, make it a great day.